This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Purse, here with your co-host, Bill Hamill.
I'm so much more comfortable collecting real estate than I am collecting other stuff.
This is the Collecting Real Estate Podcast, and we just finished an excellent interview with Alli Keib from Keib Capital.
Yeah, Alli was a fantastic guest. It's great having a successful woman in the real estate investing space. Unfortunately, it's still dominated by men, and she's got a confidence about this business that I love.
Yeah, it's so cool to see a mom crushing it. And she's at such an exciting part of her real estate journey where she has a proof of concept with this portfolio of small multifamily. She's an owner operator. She gets it. She knows how to do it well. And you can tell that she's ready to ramp up and really scale to the next level. And I can't wait to watch it happen.
Bottom line, since I've known Alli right up till now, after our discussion, she has that growth mindset where I think at some point soon she's going to scale up.
She understands real estate and she's excited about it. And when those two things go together, the success is inevitable.
That's the recipe.
Alli, thank you so much for being on the Collecting Real Estate Podcast. Can we jump right into it and hear more about your real estate background?
Sure. My real estate career has sort of been actually a little bit short. I started my career in the financial services industry. And when I moved upstate from New York City is really when I kind of got into the whole, real estate thing. It was sort of a career shift for me. Had to do partially with me kind of seeking out a way to have a little bit more balance in my life with career and family. And real estate just felt like a really appropriate fit for that. So started reading a bunch of books and, kind of got hooked on the whole idea of investing in real estate for the tax benefits and for just creating kind of generational wealth for my family. So 2018, I bought my first duplex, and the rest is history. Just sort of been slowly growing my portfolio since.
That's awesome, Alli. So you mentioned some books. Can you tell us maybe a book or two that stuck with you and what mindset that put you in and what type of real estate assets you wanted to get into first?
Sure. This is probably cliche, but the probably most life-changing book that I've read is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Ken Kiyosaki. Just the idea that we don't need to be this sort of cog in a wheel, right? In this kind of entrenched in this rat race mentality where you're tied to a job to make money, right? And this idea of kind of wealth being more about passive income, right? And you can still buy the luxuries that you like in life, but make sure you're buying your assets first to create sort of streams of income in order to sort of, support your lifestyle was kind of really life-changing for me. And on the same token, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, that's a newer book, but also really dives into kind of the behavioral finance piece, which I think is just really embedded in real estate investing in general. So that really helped me to change my mindset and sort of think, bigger, long-term, and think about sort of financial success in a really different way. And then from a real estate perspective, I really love, this is a little bit logistical, but the ABCs of Real Estate Investing by Ken McElroy was a really great book as well.
Some great books, and getting in the right mindset is such a good first step to real estate investing. It's so important. They should really give those books to high school students. Now, when you were working in the financial industry in New York City, at that time, you didn't have any real estate experience and you didn't see yourself going into the real estate industry, did you?
Oh, none whatsoever. I was working in New York City, like I said, really entrenched in the rat race. Didn't realize I was at all, but working tons of hours and thinking that what I was doing was what you needed to do to be successful. It's what I had always been taught. It's what I had always, learned about. It's what and nothing against my parents, but it's what they thought too, right? It's what sort of generations of us have kind of been trained into thinking that, you go to school, take on student loans, you get out of school, you get a job, you work for someone else for years and years and years and years. You have this salary, right? And then you hope to retire at 65. On the savings that you've accumulated. But oh, by the way, along the way, you're supposed to buy this huge house and all these cars, and suddenly, you're sort of wrapped up in this debt. But society kind of tells us that that's normal and that's what you're supposed to do. And so that's what I thought. And frankly, if we didn't move upstate for my husband's job, and I didn't seek out kind of a different lifestyle once I started growing my family, it probably would still be, in that world. So everything happens for a reason.
Well, that's so enlightening to so many people. We don't all discover this. Fortunately, I believe that we've all discovered this. It goes back to what Stephen had mentioned, where, boy, they should teach us this stuff in high school. And what you discovered was, building wealth isn't necessarily investing in 401ks and having a W-2. There is a better way. And what was that time frame of that transitional change from being a financial services person in New York City and then saying to yourself and your husband, wow, we need to find that balance? How long did that discussion go on for, and what did that look like getting into the capital region of New York?
Yeah, it happened really slowly for me. And sort of the things I was just talking about with wealth, I didn't really discover those things until later on, frankly, in my real estate business. I started the business, like I said, really more because I was working in the sort of, financial services industry, started my family, and realized that, being a stay-at-home mom wasn't for me. Kudos to all the women that do it. For me, I really felt like part of my identity was wrapped up in working. So investing I was actually just kind of following the lifestyle that I thought it might be able to provide for me, where I could work and be a mom in a flexible way. And only after I started investing and really enjoying the process, did I start to really understand what it could mean from a long-term perspective, and really start to kind of dive into, wait a second, I can really build something big here where we could, provide for our families with this, cash flow, and build, just accumulate these assets and build a business that our kids could kind of really benefit from later on. So it was really a process for me, and it started more about just finding a career that I could do while being home, and then it turned into sort of this passion and just educating myself. And I'm still learning all about it. So.
We're all still learning in an industry that there's so many men. It's so great to see a mom dive in and be successful and really have a passion for it. Once you discovered that passion and you were educating yourself and you knew you wanted to do this, what was your first deal like? What was your first transaction, your first property?
Yeah, so I had read, enough books to kind of have a sense of what I should be looking for. And in 2018, the market was very different than it is today. So you could still really find a good deal on the MLS. So a duplex came up, and I used a real estate agent that I had known for a while. We were kind of first in line. So I threw an offer in. I knew enough that when I went to see the property that, their asking price was actually fair, and I just offered full price. And I remember 17 people behind me offers. But I was the first one, and they accepted my offer, and that was my first deal. So.
Well, amazing.
Well, is it that? Go ahead.
Amazing. 2018, you say it was a completely different marketplace, but you had to offer full price, and you had 17 other offers. And it's heated up even more since then. And what are you seeing now with the MLS, and how are you finding deals or any type of opportunities now?
Yeah. So what I meant by it was a different market is just that, the asking prices still made sense when you saw something on the MLS, right, relative to the income you could get for from your tenants. I felt like it was doable, right? To say, oh, hey, that looks like a good property, and the asking price is really where it kind of should be from a value perspective. And today, I find if more often than not, a property, the asking price is just inflated. And so I am leaning towards more off market deals today. If I can find them, it's also not super easy, but it's, to me, it's a little preferential over the MLS. So I'm still looking, right? It's still really helpful to look. But I also find, at least for the smaller multifamily space, because the housing market has gone up so much, right? I mean, people are priced out of the single family homes, and so those people are now buying duplexes as kind of like owner occupant situations, and those people are typically willing to pay more for a duplex than, say, an investor, and so that's causing those prices to then rise, and so it's kind of like just a little bit of a vicious cycle, at least in the market that I've been looking in. So.
While we're on the topic of deal finding, can we get into more of what your criteria is? Do you have any golden rules where the financials have to meet this for me to buy it? Or is there anything specific that you look for when you look for properties?
Yeah. So in the smaller multi-family space, which I've shared with both of you, is kind of something I'm looking to kind of deviate away from, and as I think about scaling my portfolio. But yeah, I look at a few things. That's just sort of the quick, dirty rule, right? That 1% rule that we've always talked about, right? Is your income 1% of the purchase price, right? And that doesn't at all ever mean that that's a good deal, right? But at least it's sort of like, if it's not hitting that, you're going to kind of know that this isn't going to cash flow the way that I want, right?
Yep.
And then from like a cash on cash ROI perspective, I'd love to see double digits, 13%. Preferably, my husband's a stock market guy, so his whole thing is, if we're going to do this, we want the return to be, higher than we could get in the market, right? So, so those are just a couple of things that I look for. And I also always talk about this, and it seems a little fluffy and silly, but my gut is also really what I look for, right? Like sometimes it's not, the numbers need to, of course, work, but I need to walk into a property and say, yes, like this is something that I really want to add to my portfolio. Like I can say I love every single one of my properties. I love. I have like a good feeling about, and sort of sounds a little funny, but that is really important to me. Instinct, right? Just knowing like, hey, I know I can make this property, even if it needs a little TLC, I can make this a beautiful apartment for somebody, and this will attract the high quality tenant that I want, right? So this like qualitative, criteria is to me just as important as the quantitative.
I love that feeling when you walk into a
Mhm.
property. Me and Stephen have discussed this over time, a few occasions, when you see the address, you see the numbers, and everything is good enough to at least set up that viewing. And then when you're walking into that building and you see a few apartments, and in your mind, you're like, okay, I've got one.
Mhm.
And in this
Yeah.
marketplace, it's hard to get it because there's so much competition. But that gut feeling and then that general feeling really creates that excitement to want to own that property. Getting back to, you seeing that potential, buying small properties one by one, and you're seeing, wow, look what I can do in real estate. I can have that life balance, be a mom, and also build wealth. What is your mindset now where you've accumulated some smaller properties? How do you see that scaling happening in relation to what you've done with the smaller properties?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think when you've never done this before, right? You sort of hear about people buying these huge buildings, and you're like, well, that's just them. Like, they have a skill set, they have knowledge that I just don't. So that's not something that I can touch, right? So I'm good with like the little duplexes. And as time went on, and as I read more books and talked to more people, you really realize that sure, you're looking at maybe some different metrics, right? Maybe a cap rate comes more into play, and NOI rate. There's different calculations that you'll do, but there's not, it's a little, not that dissimilar, right? As you scale up from smaller multifamily to large multifamily. And, having a handle on the smaller multifamily in a way that I don't think that I ever really expected, like really feeling like I feel good about this. Like I'm ready for the next step. And again, just feeling really equipped, from knowing the numbers, and also just like knowing what it means to manage a property and, be a landlord and have tenants. And, the mindset just really starts to shift and say, hey, like there's just no reason that I shouldn't be able to take what I know and learn and, translate it into, much bigger things. And that's kind of where I am. Like the comfort level with the idea of scaling is much greater than I really would have imagined. Right. So like, I just feel ready. And obviously, and anything in life, when you're going to kind of jump out of your comfort zone, it's scary, it's daunting, but no more daunting than starting this business in the first place, right? Going from zero to small family feels, I felt just as nervous as I do feeling about going from small multifamily to larger multifamily. And I'm not talking about, jumping into, a 300 unit property, right? But just, starting to scale up and kind of getting my hands on some larger deals is definitely, I think, the next step for me. So
My question is, why not a 300 unit property?
yeah, well, you're right. I mean, look, you're absolutely right, right? You're absolutely right. It's just right. It's one of those things where you just first of all, it has to come your way, but no, it's a great point. You're absolutely right. I'm the only thing in my way, right? Just me saying something like that. So getting rid of those limitations in your mindset is, I think, key. So you're right.
That 10 to 30 unit, some people call the garden style apartment, does seem to be the natural next step up from the 2 to 4 units.
Correct.
But given your background in the financial services industry and the connections that I'm sure you and your husband have to accredited investors, both coming from the financial world in New York City, I don't think syndicating a 300 unit building is out of your reach the next year.
You could be right. Syndicating, of course, and Bill and I have talked about this, for me, that's another like layer of responsibility for me, right? Because obviously you're now responsible for other people's money, and you want to make sure you're 100%, going to make those people whole. And will I ever do a syndicate deal on my own? I'm pretty sure that I will. But perhaps just to be really prudent, I probably would want to sort of do it. I wouldn't say baby steps, but maybe, not right away. But yes, I do think that that's in my future.
That's great. I love how Stephen called you out on saying, "Please, let's eliminate any limiting beliefs here. Let's knock out that 300 unit." But it's funny. I have been trying to explain to as many people as I can, and saying, please go bigger, faster, as long as you have the confidence and the comfortability with what you're doing, where you can systematically go from, all right, I just bought a couple duplexes, a 3, a 6 unit, and make those stepping stones to where it's not overwhelming, not drastic. But before you know it, after 2 or 3 years, you're ready to buy a 20 or 30 unit. So I see that you're not quite ready for that syndication. But when you do find that 20 or 30 unit and the numbers work, what does that deal look like? Do you see that as a joint venture, maybe a partner or two? What are you thinking there?
Yeah, perhaps. Everything thus far has been just me. So I just attended the Bigger Pockets conference in New Orleans. And one of the things that they spoke about a lot at that conference was, partnering the right way is so important to get, where you want to be, right? You can only do so much on your own. And the second you start to sort of, accept other people into your world and bring different, areas of expertise, whether it be, money or something else that they bring to the table, it can just help you kind of really launch much further. So I am certainly not opposed. And I think it would depend on the deal. But yeah, I think partnerships are great. I also think, you know, aside from partnerships, bringing other people on to delegate to is also one of the things that they really harped on at that business, right? Like just going back to just, you can't do it all by yourself, right? Like just being able to say, hey, I need to really focus on this area of my business, and this is what's going to, propel me the furthest, fastest. And so I have to relinquish control over XYZ. And right. And in order to do that, I've got to find people to help me with those things. And if you're not willing to kind of give up some of that control, it's going to be much harder to kind of progress the way that you want. And so that's challenging for me because I love control. I'm very type A. And even the thought of it makes me nervous, right? Like my properties are my babies, right? But I at least really do understand that in order to scale and grow, I will have to either do a partnership, Bill, like you said, or right, delegate certain areas of my business to let me, give me the freedom to then, go after certain things. So
Such an important message that you need to find partners to scale. And it's that old saying that 10% of $1,000,000 is better than 100% of $1,000.
nothing.
And I'm glad you went to BPCon and had a good time. I remember opening up my Instagram and I was like, oh, it's Alli and Brandon. That's so cool. I was so excited to see that. Sticking on the topic of networking, you run a local networking event here, the Saratoga meetup. I think it's 4 days from now. I'm excited. I have a great time every month. It's a really good opportunity to meet with local investors. How has that helped your career, meeting people in the same industry?
I can't really even explain it. It's been such a powerful thing for me. And, it's one of those things where it just sort of fell in my lap. I didn't start the group. Someone else started the group and he asked me to take over running it. And at first I was kind of weary about it. I was like, oh no, that seems like kind of a lot of work. And, I got to get up in front of all these people every month. So maybe it was a little outside my comfort zone, but I just kind of embraced it. And I love the group. It's such a special part of my heart, and everybody at the meeting, I just respect, and I love hearing their progress. I get so excited when I hear people, doing deals. And, there's that book, Dale Carnegie, right? How to Win Friends, or something, I don't know the exact title, but you're nodding, so you know what I'm referring to, right? I mean, networking is just such an important thing. And networking it goes maybe against conventional wisdom, but it's the opposite of anything about you, right? Networking has to be about everybody else, and eventually that will come back, right? So, but I think that's so important to always be willing to network with people that are, not as progressed in their career as you are, and also people that are, much further along in their business than you, right? So it's having both of those. And I think that the meeting has really grown where we have people with all different levels of expertise at the meetup. So I've met so many people, and I feel like those relationships will really help me to find deals down the line and procure different things, and opportunities will arise, I think, definitely from those networking meetings. And then, I've been going to other people's networking meetings like yours, and that's also incredibly helpful. And then conferences like I just went to, at Bigger Pockets. I just think networking in general is just such an important way to expand your, network of people, and, put yourself in a position to really capitalize on opportunities that could come your way because of it.
Alli, that's awesome, because we've only known each other for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months, something like that. And what I've noticed is you take action, and you're not afraid to jump outside of your comfort zone. And for many, many years, I was able to take action buying properties systematically over the years, but was making myself an exception to the rule, not doing the networking that I could have, saying, I'm doing okay, I don't need that. And boy, was that a mistake. And I appreciate you seeing the value there, because getting outside of that comfort zone, even though it's uncomfortable, you're getting that growth, you're building that muscle. And now, tell me if I'm wrong, you're probably comfortable standing up in front of your meetup and introducing yourself to familiar faces, new faces and building that
Mhm.
database.
Completely. Yeah, it is, the first couple times it's really nerve-wracking getting up, and now I have a comfort level that I didn't have. And I think it's also so important in business to kind of pivot between going to a place like the Bigger Pockets conference where I am like a peon, right? I mean, these people, I mean, and there are plenty of beginners, but a lot of people up on the stage have just hundreds and thousands of units, right? And so like me with my little portfolio, right? It's like I'm just looking at them with like my mouth gaping open, like, wow, okay. And so you go from that, and then 2 weeks later you go and then to a situation where you're actually looked at as somewhat of an expert, right? And it's so funny to go from one to the other, but the combination of the two is actually very powerful, right? So, and then taking what you learn from a large conference like that, where I'm just sitting in the audience, to then relaying it up on stage to another group of maybe not as experienced investors. Like, I feel like that's just such a nice way to kind of bridge the gap between, knowledge and experience and things. And so that's what I'll try and do, at the next meeting and going forward, as I kind of bring things along, back from experiences that I have, to be able to share that with the group that I run is really important to me.
It's so important to see both sides of the coin. On one side,
Mhm.
you're so humbled, and on the other side, you're an absolute
Right.
rock star to these people. Moving
Yeah, I don't
away,
know about Rockstar, but like it's funny to go from, shifting from those roles, right? And but it's so fun to do both. And I think both are really so important.
I agree. In this industry, there's a lot of unexpected days and things pop up out of nowhere. And a lot of that can lead to funny stories. So we like to ask if people have ever had an interesting experience to try and lighten the mood a little bit. Have you ever had a funny story dealing with your apartment or any turnovers or anything like that?
Yes. I've had a lot of funny stories. But the one that sort of sticks in my mind, um, was my first property, my very, very first duplex. I had one couple in one of the units, and they were only there for a year, which obviously isn't ideal, but they were moving out of the state. Nice couple. And I was still in the mentality like, I'm going to do everything myself. I'm not going to hire, still so green at all this. I'm like, it's a small unit. I can clean this thing, right? They're clean people. And I go in there and I have all my cleaning products, and I already had new tenants secured to come in, right? So, I'll just mop some floors and I'll scrub the stove and the sink. They'll be good to go. And I'm kind of on my hands and knees and getting like a spot out of the ground, the vinyl planks. There's like some little, and I'm scrubbing, and all of a sudden I look down and there's just little tiny black bugs hopping all over my body. And I had shorts on and sandals, and just I was being attacked by fleas. The cat, I guess their cat had fleas, and my ankles. I guess some people have different different reactions to these things, but I did not have a good reaction. My ankles blew up like balloons. It was awful. Luckily, my tenants, they were so nice. I had already given their security deposit back, and everything, but I told them what happened, and they paid me for the remediation, which was just really nice. And that goes back to, right, like screening tenants, is because they were such nice people. So they paid me for that, but I had to have the whole apartment kind of, they called a blowout, right? The remediation company. And I guess it just taught me a lesson, right? Like, going back to delegating, some of the tasks that aren't as pleasant, try and try and hire those things out. Yeah, so that's sort of funny. And I have pictures of my legs, and I won't share them, but it was definitely an interesting experience. So
That is fabulous. I've mentioned a story of mine to Stephen about extermination. And I've dealt with the fleas too, where you're doing work, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh no, what's on my ankles? But my first property that I purchased at age 21, not knowing what neighborhood I was even in, buying a property in a war zone type area. And after my first tenant moved out, I discovered roaches. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to be the landlord. I'm taking over the world. So I go to Home Depot, buy my, Home Depot roach spray. I start in the living room, doing the ceiling perimeter, all the areas of the walls, the baseboards, make my way all through the apartment, and then go back to the living room and just see the walls covered with roaches because all the spray did was just
Bring
it
them all.
brought them
Yeah.
out. And now I'm sitting there like I'm in the Wild West of extermination, not only in the living room, but all the other areas in the apartment. Now the entire apartment is just riddled with roaches all over the place. And it was absolute culture shock.
Yeah. See, that's even a worse story than mine. I don't know how it would, I think I would just run for the hills at that point.
I'm gonna learn from both of you and be an owner and not an operator.
Exactly.
Avoid the cockroaches and the fleas.
No
Yes.
doubt. With that said, Alli, I know that you're self-managing your properties. Is that something that you want to continue to perfect and continue to do? Or at some point, are you looking to hire out to third-party manager?
Yeah, I mean, no, going back to sort of what I said a little earlier, I think it's going to be very key for me to start to delegate some of that property manager roles and responsibilities out. I think it's really the only way to really properly scale the way I want, right? So my small portfolio now is very manageable, and there are a couple different, like some people are property managers and they're doing everything themselves, whereas like they get a call from the tenant, they go down with a hammer and a nail or whatever. I'm not doing that. So I have like handyman and people that help me, so I'm fielding the calls and the messages from the tenants, but I have other people to help. But I'm going to have to take it to another level and really just kind of take myself out of the tenant landlord relationship, I think, in order to move forward. And I don't know, maybe that looks like if I buy, say, a 15 unit, right? Maybe I have a property manager just to do that building and I continue to manage my properties. Now, I'm not exactly sure how that will work, but I do know that 100%, I don't plan on continuing to manage the way that I am as I scale.
I like to hear that because it means you do have that growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
As you look for that potential 15 unit, and you mentioned deals are hard to find on the MLS, where are you looking? What's your process like right now to try and find that next deal?
Well, going back to the networking, I think the more people I can tell about what I'm looking for, I think the better, right? Because if I can cultivate relationships with people that have other relationships with people. So I've only been doing this for 3 years, but people that I meet have been doing it for 20, right? And so the more people that know what I'm looking for, so as much as I can share with people, I think the better. And I already do get a ton of messages. Hey, look at this. This seems like it might hit your criteria. This, da, 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 right? I'm getting messages like that. So that's really helpful. I've also had a lot of success with letters. And this is more on the small multifamily space, but I'm not opposed to sending letters out to larger building owners and things like that. Because you might get lucky and have someone say, "Hey, I'm ready to get out of this," and this person just this letter fell in my lap, and it's all about sometimes timing. So yeah, but and of course I have my eye on LoopNet and MLS all the time, but like I said before, those are sometimes I feel like if they've hit there, they're just not a good deal, at least in this market. So yeah.
You've had success with letters. What was your system for that? Were you handwriting them? Were you printing them? How many
I
did you send?
yeah. So I've bought, from listsource.com, I've bought like a bunch of just, you sort of filter by city, by town, and the number of units that you want. And I've retrieved a bunch of lists from them. I've gotten a lot of the stuff is not accurate, frankly, right? So I get a lot of like return to sender, but enough of those letters get sent out and get delivered, and I get a lot of callbacks. I haven't done them in a little time now, but the response rate is great, and especially a couple of years ago, I did these before I really had any properties, and it was just such good practice to converse with sellers, if anything, right? Like I remember, I'll never forget, I sent a whole mailer out and I was so nervous about, just getting the language perfect, right? Like in the letters and signing my name and handwriting everything. And I never got to the point where, well, what do I say if someone actually calls me? And so I got a phone call. I literally never forget. I was on a treadmill and I got a phone call and I didn't know the number, obviously. And I pick up and it was someone responding, and I I did not know how to, like, it's just so funny how far I feel like I've come in a couple of years, because now I could be on a treadmill with nothing in front of me and have a very sophisticated conversation with somebody about their property, right? And it was pretty awful. Yeah. So it's just sort of, it's just fun. I just remember just getting so, being really uptight about the actual letter and then not preparing myself for what would come next. I guess I didn't think anyone would call, but it is, it has been really, it's how I found a couple of my deals. So letters have been really helpful.
Well, that's how we learn sometimes, where, things, we stumble into things, and then we, on a very small level, it's like, okay, that phone call failed, but what have I learned from that? And how am I going to take advantage of that opportunity the next time around? Getting
Right.
back to, the scaling, that's what is fun for me right now. So that's what I like to talk about. And I do love how you're thinking about hiring third-party property management at some point. So as you scale, you're hiring out property management so you can utilize your time much better to grow
Right.
your business. Hearing you doing the letters and some direct to seller, is that the favorite part of the business, or what is the favorite part of the real estate investing business for you?
Oh, my favorite part of the real estate investing business. Um, that's a hard question. Yeah, I mean, I do love conversing with the sellers, and but I wouldn't say that the letters are my favorite part. I think my favorite part of this business is kind of what I said in the beginning of the call. It's just this, um, it's just a feeling that I have, that I'm able to own something that is going to create opportunities for my kids, and a business that will continue to grow and accumulate upon itself. Um, and that I'm able to have this harmony in my life where I can be a mom and be, this business owner, in a way that I think society sometimes tells women that they can't do, right? The have it all type of thing. So yes, I love the real estate piece, right? I love owning buildings, and I've actually really enjoyed managing my properties, and I love working with people. So having tenants has been really fun. I love interior design, so the whole renovating process has been really fun. I love taking, kind of a distressed unit and rehabbing it. So I love all the intricacies of the real estate. But for me, I think the thing that I love the most about the business is just the fact that it's just so different than the definition of success that I had been taught growing up. And I'm just excited to grow this thing so that my daughter Mackenzie will have an easier time, right, choosing between this balance between career and motherhood, that a lot easier of a time than I did, right? And so that's really my goal, and that's what I love the most about the business.
No, and that's awesome. I'm seeing that basically the growth mindset, where you're able to just look at life, look at your family, look at your
Yeah.
business, and see and vision how you're able to put it all together, have your
Mhm.
cake and eat it too, so to speak. And that's
Yes.
possible. And that's the
Yes.
beautiful part of real estate. And in my opinion, it's the best investment vehicle in the world. And it allows for that.
Right. And the idea of financial freedom is what I think real estate investors talk about a lot. This idea of just, not being tied to a job. And they say, right, like real wealth is the ability, right? Like being rich is, you might make a lot of money, but the second you stop working, right, that money, and even if you have some saved, eventually it goes away. Being wealthy is this ability to say, hey, I'm not going to work anymore, but I still have this passive income, coming my way. And then that enables you to just free up your life and just focus on the people and the things that you love the most. And, for me, that's family. And I travel and, all those things that people tend to in this world not get to do enough of. Right. So,
And that's what it's all about,
Mhm.
relationships, family, friends.
Yep.
At the end of the day, that's all that matters. and we're using real estate and money as a tool, to create, that beauty with your relationships. I really do respect your time here, Alli. And they say you have to have three of something to have a collection. So to wrap up this episode, we have three questions for you. Number one,
Okay.
what is your 1 to 2 year business goal?
1 to 2 years. Okay, so see, this question is really hard for me, and I really should have a much better answer. At the Bigger Pockets conference, we had to sit and talk about our 3-year goal, and for that, I said 100 units. So and one of the things that they talked about also is that you overestimate what you can achieve in 1 year and underestimate what you can achieve in 3 years. That's because a lot of people think of success as being really linear, when really, it kind of ebbs and flows. So I'm not going to put a number on that. I'll say 100 units in 3 years. That's probably, I don't know. That's a hard question.
Well, it's very realistic, as we know. Getting back, you're going to be buying a 300 unit here within the next 6 months. So,
yes. And the other thing is, people say, like, your goals should really, if you're meeting your goals, you haven't set them high enough, right? So I think I can probably hit that. And maybe that means it's not a good enough goal, but it's something I threw down. So
can't wait to watch that happen. Number 2, your 1 to 2 year personal goal.
Oh, 1 to 2 year personal goal. Oh yes, I remember I saw these questions. Should have been more prepared. One thing that I'm really working for right now is to get better at tennis. I was a tennis player in high school, and I let it kind of drop off as I got older and went to college and had my career. And I've picked it back up, and I'm finally now, playing at the level that I feel like I was in high school. And I was good in high school. I was never like, amazing. I wasn't going to play professionally, but I could really hold my own. And so I have a personal goal of really feeling like I'm a good player again. And so I'm on my way there. And so that's just a personal goal.
Well, that's cool. It's, any of our hobbies, it's always much more enjoyable when we're good at it and at playing
Yes.
at our close to our full potential.
Yes.
So how can Steve and I or the listeners assist you, and how do we contact you?
Sure. I guess, assisting me would be, just, if there are any deals that come along that fit that kind of, 10 to 25 unit apartment buildings. I like to stay kind of in the suburb areas. I'm not necessarily looking in bigger cities. So we're set up somewhat locally. My buildings now are in Ballston Spa Village, which I really love. And the more, I feel like the more practice I get kind of analyzing deals is also really helpful. So if anyone has a property that they're looking at and analyzing, I just like to look at the numbers and just to kind of get a sense of, oh, hey, so, this is what the seller gave you. And this is, you poked holes in it this way. And then you came up with this on your own. And this is what you ended up asking, right? Like the more I feel like I can get my hands around the process of looking at larger multifamily as opposed to small multifamily, I think the better. And anyone can contact me. My email is keibcapital@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram at Keib Capital. Should I give my phone number? Is that okay? My phone number is 631-513-1212.
Awesome. All I have to say about that comment is, these mayors and leaders of these inner cities better wake up and figure out how to run their cities, because investors are fleeing from investing their money in these inner cities. We're thinking of the same thing, investing in townships in the capital region for a variety of reasons. So I really align with you with that thought. So Alli, we really appreciate you as a guest today. It was a fantastic discussion. And
thank you for having me.
No, it's awesome. We can't wait to do this again sometime. And any of the listeners, if you like this episode, please subscribe to the Collecting Real Estate podcast and give us a 5-star review.
Thank you, Alli.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Bye.